For almost 1,000 years they carried two swords. They protected castles, served powerful lords, fought in brutal civil wars, and followed a code that taught them to face death without fear. They began as servants. Then they became rulers. For centuries, the real power in Japan did not belong to the emperor sitting inside his beautiful palace. It belonged to the warriors standing beneath the castle walls, the samurai. But in the summer of 1853, 4 dark ships appeared near the coast of Japan. Black smoke rose from their metal chimneys. Their cannons were more powerful than anything the samurai had ever seen. The warriors stood on the shore with their swords at their sides and watched a new world arrive from across the ocean. For hundreds of years, the sword had represented power. Now, suddenly, it was no longer enough. This is the story of how the samurai rose from the countryside, took control of Japan, ruled for centuries, and then disappeared when the world changed around them. It is a story of loyalty and betrayal, of discipline and ambition, of courage, sacrifice, and loss, and it asks one powerful question. What happens when the world no longer needs the person you were trained to become? Welcome to Learn English from History. Today we are traveling through 1,000 years of Japanese history to discover the rise and fall of the samurai. Our story begins long before modern Tokyo existed. Japan was a land of green mountains, thick forests, quiet rivers, and distant farming villages. The emperor ruled from the ancient capital. Around him were wealthy nobles who wrote poetry, performed ceremonies, and discussed politics. Inside the capital, life appeared peaceful. But far from the palace, the situation was very different. Roads were dangerous. Powerful families fought over land. Bandits attacked travelers. Local officials could not protect every village. So, wealthy landowners began creating their own groups of armed men. These warriors guarded farms, collected taxes, protected roads, and defended the property of their masters. They became skilled horse riders and archers. They trained with bows, spears, and swords. They were known as bushi, meaning warriors. Over time, another word became connected with them. Samurai. The word came from an old Japanese term meaning to serve. That meaning is important. The first samurai were not independent heroes traveling across Japan in search of adventure. They were servants. They fought for a lord. They protected his land. They obeyed his commands. But these servants slowly became stronger. They controlled weapons. They commanded armed men. They understood the countryside better than the nobles living inside the capital. The emperor still had ceremonies. The nobles still carried important titles. But outside the palace, it was the warriors who protected the land and controlled the roads. Japan had created the samurai because it needed protection. One day, those protectors would become more powerful than the people they served. A samurai's training often began when he was still a child. He learned to ride horses, use a bow, and fight with a sword. He learned to remain calm when he was tired. He learned to continue when he was in pain. But physical strength was only part of his education. A warrior also had to control his mind. He was expected to remain loyal to his lord, protect his family's reputation, and show courage in battle. If defeat became unavoidable, he was expected to face death with dignity. Later generations connected these values with Bushido, meaning the way of the warrior. Bushido was not originally one written book of rules. Its ideas developed slowly over many centuries. Different clans understood it in different ways, but several values appeared again and again: loyalty, courage, duty, self-control, respect, and honor. A samurai might lose his money, he might lose his home, he might even lose his life, but if he lost his honor, he believed he had lost something even more important. Samurai were also taught to think about death, not because they wanted to die, but because accepting death could free them from fear. A warrior who tried to protect his life at every moment might hesitate when action was necessary. A warrior who had already accepted the possibility of death could move forward. This belief gave the samurai great courage, but it could also trap him. His life did not fully belong to him. His lord could command him to fight. His family could demand sacrifice. His reputation could force him into danger. The same values that made the samurai strong could also make him powerless. And this creates a question that still matters today. Is loyalty always honorable? Or can loyalty become dangerous when we stop questioning the person we serve? As warrior families became more powerful, rival clans began fighting for control of Japan. Two families rose above the others, the Taira clan and the Minamoto clan. At first, they fought through politics, family connections, and secret alliances. Then, in 1180, words were no longer enough. War began. The conflict became known as the Genpei War. For 5 years, samurai armies fought across Japan. Villages were destroyed. Temples burned. Families were divided. Warriors who had once served the same government now killed one another for rival clans. The war ended in 1185 at the Battle of Dan no Ura. The battle took place at sea. The Taira carried the young Emperor Antoku with them. At first, the Taira used the water currents to their advantage, but when the tide changed, the Minamoto forces began to win. The Taira ships were surrounded. Their warriors understood that the battle was lost. According to the famous story, members of the Taira family jumped into the sea rather than allow themselves to be captured. The young emperor also died in the water. The Taira clan was destroyed. The Minamoto had won. Their leader, Minamoto no Yoritomo, did not simply return power to the imperial court. He created a military government. In 1192, Yoritomo received the title of shogun. The emperor remained in Kyoto and continued to perform important ceremonies. But the shogun controlled the warriors, and the person who controlled the warriors controlled Japan. The samurai were no longer only servants of power. They had become the ruling class. For centuries, powerful regional lords known as daimyo controlled land, castles, farmers, and groups of loyal samurai. A samurai received protection and income from his lord. In return, he promised loyalty and military service. The system created order, but it also created tension. Every lord wanted more land. Every clan remembered old insults. One death, one betrayal, or one disputed inheritance could begin another war. By the 15th century, the central government had become weak. In 1467, conflict broke out in Kyoto. The fighting became known as the Nin War. It helped push Japan into the Sengoku period, meaning the age of warring states. For more than 100 years, Japan was divided. Lord fought lord. Castle attacked castle. Alliances were created and broken. Brothers turned against brothers. Generals betrayed their masters. Some samurai lost their lords and became Ronin warriors without masters. A Ronin still had the weapons and training of a samurai, but he had no one to serve. Some became teachers or bodyguards. Others wandered from place to place looking for work. Some became criminals. For a warrior whose entire identity was built around service, becoming a Ronin could feel like losing the meaning of life itself. Then, 3 extraordinary leaders appeared. Together, they would end the age of chaos. The first was Oda Nobunaga. When Nobunaga was young, many people did not take him seriously. He ignored traditions and behaved differently from other noble sons. Some believed he was foolish. They were wrong. Nobunaga understood warfare better than most of his enemies. More importantly, he was willing to use new ideas. Portuguese traders had brought firearms to Japan. Many traditional warriors did not respect guns. A gun could be used by an ordinary soldier with far less training than a sword or bow. To some samurai, that seemed dishonorable. Nobunaga did not care. He understood a simple truth. A weapon did not need to be honorable. It needed to win. He trained groups of soldiers to use firearms together. His armies defeated rival clans, captured castles, and brought much of Japan under his control. But in 1582, one of his own generals betrayed him. Nobunaga was surrounded at Honji Temple in Kyoto. Escape was impossible. According to tradition, he chose death rather than capture. He had almost united Japan, but his dream ended in betrayal. The second great leader was Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi came from humble beginnings. He was not born into a powerful samurai family, but he was intelligent, ambitious, and extremely skilled at understanding people. After Nobunaga's death, Hideyoshi defeated the man responsible for the betrayal. Then he continued the campaign to unite Japan. He used war, negotiation, rewards, and marriage alliances. By 1590, most of Japan was under his control. A man born without great status had become the most powerful leader in the country. But after Hideyoshi died, Japan's future became uncertain again. The third leader was Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ieyasu was patient. He waited. He watched. He survived defeats and allowed his enemies to make mistakes. Then, in 1600, rival armies met at the Battle of Sekigahara. During the battle, some commanders changed sides. The balance shifted. Ieyasu won. 3 years later, he became shogun. The Tokugawa family would rule Japan for more than 250 years. After generations of war, peace had finally arrived. But peace created a strange problem for the samurai. What happens to a warrior when there are no wars left to fight? During the peaceful Edo period, major battles became rare, roads became safer, cities grew, trade, art, theater, and education developed. Many samurai became government officials, teachers, accountants, and advisors. They collected taxes. They kept records. They studied poetry, philosophy, calligraphy, and religion. They still carried swords, but most would never fight in a major battle. The sword became a symbol of identity rather than a weapon of war. During this period lived one of Japan's most famous swordsmen, Miyamoto Musashi. According to tradition, Musashi fought many duels and was never defeated. But he was more than a fighter. He was also a painter, writer, and thinker. Near the end of his life, he wrote the Book of 5 Rings. It was a guide to strategy, timing, discipline, and clear thinking. For Musashi, victory did not come only from moving faster. It came from understanding the situation before the enemy did. For the peaceful samurai, training became a battle against distraction, anger, fear, pride, and laziness. But outside Japan, the world was changing. Western nations were building factories, steamships, modern rifles, and powerful cannons. Japan had limited foreign contact for more than 200 years. Then, in 1853, 4 American ships entered Edo Bay. They were commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry. The ships were dark, powerful, and driven partly by steam. Black smoke rose above them. Their cannons could destroy wooden defenses. Perry carried a letter asking Japan to open its ports to American ships and trade. The words sounded polite. The cannons behind them did not. Japan could agree, or it could risk war. The samurai could fight bravely. But courage alone could not destroy a steam-powered warship. A sword could not stop modern artillery. The arrival of the black ships created a national crisis. Some leaders argued that Japan must learn from the West and modernize. Others wanted to protect tradition and remove foreign influence. The country was divided. Could Japan remain unchanged and still remain independent? Or did it have to destroy part of its old identity to protect its future? In 1868, the Tokugawa shogunate collapsed. Authority was officially returned to Emperor Meiji. The new government moved quickly. Japan built railways, factories, schools, and a modern army. Ordinary citizens could now become soldiers. They wore uniforms and trained with modern guns. For centuries, Japan had needed the samurai because they were professional warriors. Now the government could create thousands of soldiers from the general population. The samurai were no longer necessary. Their incomes were reduced. Their privileges disappeared. Then, in 1876, most former samurai were forbidden from wearing swords in public. The law appeared simple, but its meaning was enormous. The sword represented the samurai's history, family, position, and soul. Now he had to leave it behind. Some former samurai accepted the new world. They became teachers, police officers, politicians, military commanders, and businessmen. Others could not accept the change. In 1877, Saig Takamori became the leader of a final samurai rebellion in Satsuma. Thousands joined him. They fought with courage, but the government army was larger and equipped with modern weapons. The rebels were pushed back to Mount Shiroyama. They were surrounded. Before sunrise, government artillery opened fire. The remaining samurai charged. It was brave. It was desperate. And it could not succeed. Saig died during the final battle. The rebellion was defeated. The samurai no longer existed as an official social class. They had begun as servants. They had become rulers. And now, they had become history. But the samurai did not disappear completely. Their image survived in books, paintings, films, and martial arts. Their values continued through ideas of discipline, courage, responsibility, and self-control. But the samurai we imagine today is partly history and partly legend. Not every samurai was loyal. Not every warrior was honorable. Some betrayed their masters. Some abused their power. Some were brave. Others were afraid. They were not perfect heroes. They were human beings living inside a difficult system. And that makes their story more meaningful. The true lesson of the samurai is not that a warrior should never feel fear. It is that courage means moving forward, even when fear is present. Discipline does not mean that a task becomes easy. It means continuing even when the task remains difficult. Honor is not proven through beautiful words. It is revealed through choices, especially the choices nobody else sees. The samurai also teach us that no position lasts forever. The skill that makes you powerful today may not protect you tomorrow. The world changes, technology changes, society changes. The samurai who survived were often the ones who adapted. They carried discipline from the old world into the new one. That may be the deepest lesson of their story. True strength is not only the ability to protect the past. Sometimes true strength is accepting that the past has ended and finding the courage to begin again. As an English learner, you are also following a path of discipline. You listen to a word, You forget it. You hear it again. You practice. You make a mistake. Then you try again. Progress may feel slow, but every day of practice makes you stronger. A warrior is not created by one great battle. A warrior is created through small acts of discipline repeated every day. Your English journey is the same, one sentence at a time, one story at a time, one new word at a time. The samurai could not stop time. Nobody can. But they left behind one final question. When the world changes, will you hold on to the past until it destroys you? Or will you carry its best lessons forward and become something new? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Learn English from History. Here, we improve our English by exploring the people, struggles, victories, and failures that shaped our world. And tell me in the comments, would you like the next story to be about Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated swordsman who became a philosopher? Write one word, Musashi. Until next time, keep learning, keep listening, keep practicing, and keep walking your own path with courage, discipline, and honor.